What's an occupation you're sure no one enjoys doing? I was looking for this comment. Worst job I've ever had. Desk adjusting is just a call center role on crack. Impossible metrics. Workload was unmanageable and 90% of the customers were horrible to deal with. So many coworkers started medication and or went on leave of absences for mental health reasons as a result of the job. Insurance paid me well, but cold calling 40 hours a week only to end up writing people on SAT, Sun or after hours and sometimes before hours was brutal. Salary plus commission pay. I was making about $75K/year as a captive for the In Good Hands demons at 18. Occasionally I was able to give myself a weekend off to party etc. Got into the music industry after then, and despite being much more physical and less pay, I loved it way more. I've been in insurance for 3 years and I've done field agent work, inbound calls for policy changes and claim filing, cutting death checks, underwriting and cold calling. The money's good until you have to tell a woman who is trying not to cry on the phone to you that there isn't anything you can do for her or the baby she just lost during birth. It's just a long silence and then you cry together and apologize. I honestly kind of miss it. I did it all through college. It paid well, and depending on what product you're doing customer service for, it's not always awful. We sold clothes and shoes. You'd occasionally get yelled at for messed up orders, but it wasn't bad. A lot of chatty old ladies. My company bought out a company that sold gift foods. Think edible arrangements, cheese assortments, fancy pastries. And that was awful since there's so many more ways for orders to be messed up, moldy stuff, broken jam jars, bugs in the fruit. But now that I've graduated and work in the creative field, I miss being able to kind of shut your brain off and just go through the motions. Plus I worked my way into better tasks, so I was off the phone filing, training, processing returns. I had a student who was from a wealthy family that worked for the sewage department. He said his favorite job was going down into the sewers to clean the grates. He did this rather than go to university and join this family business. To keep his parents happy, he would occasionally take night classes at the community college, which is where we met. He was a really nice, happy-go-lucky person. I worked one whole day in an onion processing and packing plant. Nobody, and I mean nobody, liked that job. When I showed up, they told me I'd get used to the crying and it would go away. That was a lie. And when it's that many onions, you're not just crying. You can't open your eyes and you can feel it in your sinuses and tear ducts. All the while you're trying to look out for forklifts in a pretty tight-knit warehouse. The forklifts are moving fast because the plant just has to keep processing. If you were lucky, you would just do cold packing, but generally you would be working an assembly line that chopped the onions. Never went back. I used to move furniture for a rent-to-own furniture store. That includes delivering it, setting it up, and taking it back when the people and their rental or can't pay for it. People who get rent-to-own furniture do not tend to be happy people. I repossessed a vacuum cleaner from a crying woman. I accidentally tore someone's already owned couch while repossessing a deep freeze. I removed a fridge from a house, and when we pulled it away from the wall was moving, coated in roaches. I got bit in the ass from a pack of dogs trying to knock on someone's door who had been ignoring our bills and calls, prompting me to get a rabies vaccine. I repossessed a dryer from a woman who said it wasn't working anymore, but when we removed the lint trap, it had a year's worth of lint layers stacked in it. She insisted that wasn't the problem, the dryer was broken. I was cleaning up a computer we repossessed from someone, when a pair of enormous antennae appeared from the fan vent. We moved the computer into the box truck outside, set off a bug bomb, and closed the door. The next day we had to sweep a large carpet of bugs out of the truck. Never again. God bless you. I hired a TaskRabbit mover in NYC, and this guy was a beast with a cargo van. He was built like The Rock and held an IKEA two-seater couch with one arm while holding the door for me with the other. I'm a skinny Asian dude and just ran around propping doors open for him, and moving stuff into the hallway. I tipped him $50 because he somehow moved my entire studio in about 2 hours total. Whenever someone in the city is moving, I tell them to use this guy. The work you guys do is well appreciated. Edit. Hey all. I just logged into my TaskReddit account to try to get you all his info, and it looks like his account has been deactivated. Frown. I don't see it in my previous taskers. Sorry. My mother's fiber broke on her ATT connection. I called tech support and service to get it fixed. They tell me it would be 3 weeks to get someone out. I made the appointment and hung up. I called Spectrum, the only other provider in her area, and told them if they could get there faster we would switch. They said 2 days. So I called ATT back and told them if they wanted our business they had 24 hours to get there. I also might have told them the 2 service guys can fight to the fucking death. Well, they both showed up the next morning, but Spectrum won, and we had the ATT boxes and modem in a box to give the repair guy. Edit. I'm not sure the type of fiber she had, but it was extremely slow. She had 3 TVs, phone and internet. If you had all the TVs on different channels, he could barely do a FaceTime. If you were on a phone call, you needed to turn off one TV at least to keep connection. This fiber was sticking out of a box on the wall, and it had a little white shielded fiber that broke off. Spectrum has been rock solid, and my remote software I use to keep her system clean and running is lightning fast now that she is on Spectrum. 26 years ago I was working an entry-level job in law enforcement, patrol, when I was asked to assist a senior detective who worked specifically in sex crimes. It was an opportunity to work some overtime and gain some investigation knowledge. My first night on this assignment saw me documenting and booking loads of CP into evidence after a large arrest and search warrant of a small house. That shit really messed me up. I thought I had seen it all. I grew up seeing more porn than I should have. But this was horrible. I remember having a panic attack and just couldn't understand why I was crying. That strange sensation when you feel like you can't breathe. 2 older salty cops walked me outside and took care of me. I will never forget that. Damn. Sorry about the bummer story. Cop here. We have someone at our department who gets online posing as a minor in chat rooms to try to find and arrest child predators. He also deals with CP too. Obviously the stuff he sees is very bad and the conversations he has to have while posing as a 13-year-old are disturbing. But he loves doing it because it is helping put away these sickos and protecting children. He is mandated by the department to see a counselor at least once a month, and his time in that role is limited. As a side note, it is absolutely terrifying how many predators are out there. He'll enter a chat with a username like SockSirGirl2008 or something similar, and he'll immediately have adults trying to talk to him. He will quickly let it be known that he is 13, and it does not deter the suitors. I did this for many years. While there were many annoying and frustrating times, I took a lot of pride in getting insurances to pay for what they should, saving many patients from having to be responsible for costs. My biggest accomplishment was after a 2-year appeals battle for a transplant patient, I finally got the insurances to concede and accept to pay, earning a couple million for the hospital and 0 cost to the patient. I shouted hell yeah from my cubicle. Haha. Boss bought me lunch and I got a nice little bonus that month. I worked for a few hospital networks doing receivables on the insurance side. I have to say, man, non-governmental insurance companies are scummy AF. The worst was when I was dealing with a couple of claims for suicide attempts and subsequent hospitalizations. The medical insurance side didn't want to pay because primarily the diagnostic code was psychiatric, and the behavioral health side didn't want to pay because the patient received medical treatment. In the end, they both denied the claim. We exhausted our appeal, and the patient ended up with a huge bill. Absolutely soul-sucking. I used to clean porta potties and I preferred it over things like food service. Getting over the heat from working outside in the summer and the smell is easier than you'd think. You drink lots of water and become desensitized to the smell. You spend most of your time driving. You have a set schedule, weekends off, and there aren't many people around to bother you. I got to see a lot of cool places I never would have gone to otherwise. In a way, It has more dignity than most entry-level jobs. People would always ask how much do they pay you, condescendingly. Then I could see their smug smiles sour when they found out I made more than they do. Edit. Grammar. No shit. I did moderation for a well-known game company before social media took over from message boards. Griefers are bad enough in games, but when some douchebag decides to spam horrific pictures of Harlequin babies and you have to get rid of them all before you've had your breakfast, not to mention being called a fascist in dedicated threads because you moved someone's post or something stupid like that. We also had to moderate uploads in a few very popular games. One allowed people to upload 30-second clips of them playing and we had to watch every single one. The amount of dicks I saw. Worse though was a game where you could design levels and upload photos as level elements. People were using them to upload indecent images of children. The first time I came across it and reported it to the legal department, they told me to just delete it and not bother doing anything else since it would be such a legal headache. I did that collection because I needed a job, and my friend referred it to me. It is a shit job, but I will tell you this, you learn a lot, and I mean a lot of useful information if for some reason, beyond your control, life throws you a curveball and you find yourself in debt and being the one on the other side of the phone call. You know exactly what they are not allowed to do. You know the exact terms to use to keep them at bay and to stop pestering you. What you can do to keep it out of court, or even how to fight back against debt collectors. So much information to help out the average person during tough times that it should be a required part of a financial stability class taught in all schools. This, my first job out of law school, was with a small firm. My mentor guy boasted that he would train me in all the law: bankruptcy, divorce, civil litigation. Awesome. Then I started and found out that mentor guy would actually be doing all the law and I would be handling their collection cases on behalf of Chrysler's leasing arm. I had never in my life dealt with anything like this. No one in my family has bad credit or bankruptcies, and I never even thought about reasons why people wouldn't/couldn't pay bills. We got cases where people had overmileage on their lease but had been told by the dealer that they would pay it off for them. Spoiler alert, they lied to people who surrendered cars and didn't realize they would have to pay the balance on the lease to people who just said fuck it and stopped paying. After a few strongly worded letters from the staff, I had to sue these people. It was absolutely horrible. You always had a few assholes for whom it was a game, but most people ran into financial trouble or got divorced or any number of bad things happened. The worst was this 80-something gay in a wheelchair with a voice box thingy. I felt like whatever the lawyer equivalent of the greed is good guy and wanted to make my law degree into a paper hat and go work at Wendy's. I have to preface this by swearing outright that it is the truth. I am from the west of Scotland. One half of my family is from Glasgow. My uncle is now about 60, and his wife's grandmother collected rent from people in tenements and housing blocks. So this gives you an idea of how long back we're going. This woman was in her prime in the 1940s and 1950s. Her job did not involve collecting checks or what have you. It involved collecting cash. She carried a handbag with a brick in it, and a pistol, to defend herself. Handguns weren't illegal then, though they were certainly illegal to carry about the place. But she was stamping around with clutches of banknotes in one hand on a brick and another on an illegal gun. I never met the woman, but apparently she was a sour-faced horror in a massive coat who people would scurry to avoid. But if you owed your rent, she would bang on your door for hours until you opened it. This bit was not illegal. She worked for local government. She did this for years. Getting consents for cadaverous organ donation. The shit I've seen in person is just off. Transplant medicine is a real whirlwind of feelings. Sadly, it's the nature of the beast. People come in brain dead yet still alive via vitals. Now it's their job to convince the family to pull the plug so a transplant surgeon can even get a look at the organs to see if they are usable. I had to field tons of calls for cornea banks after my wife's brother committed suicide. It felt so bizarre and surreal to be essentially parting out someone. I knew they were just doing a job and I knew how meaningful that in could be. Even so, I hated them more than anything at that moment for pulling me back into those feelings after finally getting some rest. We had already arranged donation. It just took them a while to all get the notice that this particular case was closed. I'm a nurse, and someday working for LifeShare has always been a dream job of mine. As morbid as it sounds, I've worked alongside them a lot in Mayaku, and their job is so fascinating. It's not just the getting consent, but keeping the organs viable in the body until they go to the OR for removal, helping in the OR and transporting organs, and helping with the transplant. I know it's absolutely heartbreaking, but you also know the devastation of one family is giving life to another. It's a bittersweet feeling, I suppose. LifeShare doesn't step in until brain death is confirmed, for organs, and after death for corneas and skin. I think a lot of people think they just prey on anyone sick and try to convince families to pull the plug so they can steal organs. But this is very not the case. Brain death is confirmed by a physician in the hospital, and a second physician from LifeShare. It's very interesting. Heartbreaking absolutely, but very interesting. I do this. Since 2013 I have worked in a lockdown dementia unit that is designed for people who exit, seek and escape from other units, facilities. It's tough work, it's physically demanding, and it is emotionally taxing. Many people can't survive here doing this, and I understand why. My residents are some of the most interesting and fun people I have had the pleasure of meeting. We have good days and bad days, but those good days make all the bad days worth it. I have been hit, spat on, pissed on and had BM thrown at me, but at the end of the day it's the disease that does those terrible things, not the person. But the days where I can gather everyone around the piano and get them singing along with big smiles and clapping along have been some of the best days of my life. Is it heartbreaking when they leave? Absolutely, but it's also beautiful. Do I hate my job sometimes? Who doesn't? But damn, I love my job, man. Edit. Thanks for the kind words y'all. Also BM is poop. BM equals bowel movement, poop. It is not the same thing, but my grandmother had early onset dementia or something like that. I would stay up all night to take care of her, and my grandfather would take the day shift. She was already on bed rest due to COVID, and it had gotten to a point where there was nothing any homes or medical facilities could do that we could not. It was both enjoyable to see her face light up every time I walked into the room, but also heartbreaking to know how miserable she felt not being able to do anything. She passed about 10 months ago, 3 years longer than doctors said she would. My first thoughts weren't even sad to see her go, but joy that she was no longer in pain. I'm not even extremely religious, but oh, how do I hope she's doing better now. Yes, a few months ago, I visited a geriatric ward on a weekly basis for family reasons, and all I could think was how awful of a place it was. I was almost in tears every time I was driving back home from there, not just because of the awfulness of the place but also because a lot of people spend their final days in that hell, their only grace being short visits by relatives who then get to go to their homes freely while they themselves are stuck in there with people who had forgotten their names, confused and agitated as to why they are being held there. Imagine spending the last days on this earth surrounded by screaming, zombie-like elders wandering around, often repeating the same things over and over again. I'd imagine hell being a sweet release from there. That's her problem. They dangled the title of supervisor and actually suckered you into it. You make marginally more than any other employee but probably don't qualify for overtime, and get to shoulder responsibility for an industry that has been designed from the ground up to be oppressive and insurmountable. You get to deal with high turnover and will be punished or ignored for trying to do anything about it, because you're not the MBA who sits around and decrees the industry standard now says if they removed all the office chairs, people would work 10% harder. So fun fact, this is actually part of my job and I'll tell you how it gets done. First, it's done nightly on every plane and throughout the day as requested by pilots. We hook up to hoses, one that drains and one that fills up blue juice. It also doesn't actually smell 'cause of the blue juice. We empty it via the drain tube, Usually it's mainly liquid and about 5-ish gallons even on the big planes. Flush it through with blue juice and then fill up a set amount of blue juice for the next day. I actually don't mind it all that much. As long as none of the equipment is broken, it goes fairly smoothly and doesn't take long. Makes 7 minutes per plane. It also only takes one person max to do the job.